Hello and welcome to No Veto Video. I'm Carson.
And I'm Catherine, and we're happy to have you along with us as we talk about Atomic Blonde, a movie from 2017, directed by David Leitch, starring Charlize Theron, James McAvoy, John Goodman, and Toby Jones.
Atomic Blonde follows the story of Lorraine, a spy. I'm not going to say which country, but through her exploits in trying to retrieve a list of, I believe, names? A list of names of notable people.
It's an ultimate MacGuffin.
Yeah.
So we saw the trailers for this in the movie theaters as it was coming out, but we didn't see it then. I'd heard some reviews about it that especially mentioned, the great soundtrack, the sort of love note to the 80s soundtrack that it had, and just how lived in the action sequences felt and how well directed the fight choreography was. And I thought, this might be a good movie to kick back with and to watch. And when I saw it show up on the top of my father-in-law's stack of movies that he had purchased for the week, I thought, this is great. We'll take this one home with us and watch it. So to start our response to it, the opening sequence of this film sort of catches everybody up who maybe doesn't remember 1989 and Berlin. But it also starts out really, really explicitly saying, this is not that story. And yet that story, and yet it is kind of that story. So I wonder kind of, how do you respond to that, and what did that make you think about or feel about the story that happened as it emerged?
It certainly was the backdrop to the story. Every, probably 15 minutes of the movie, there was a news report that would come on the TV, no matter where they were, and say what the state of the struggle to escape East Germany and rejoin with the West was for many people. Even some of the spies were saying it's only going to be a week before the wall comes down. So this was clearly the backdrop, no matter how much the movie said this is not this story. Everything any of the spies were trying to do was overshadowed in a way by the events. They had to make all of their plans based around what was going on, because it might be easier to get caught in certain places, or even some of the lesser details, like they would remember how events used to be in Berlin before the chaos started.
Yeah, it left me with the question about, what story is it then?
Yeah.
And it's a much smaller story in a lot of ways than, this is the story of how the Berlin Wall came down. And yet it is also about the struggle against, communism, the struggle to decide our own fates, and what happens when we get too used to the rhythms of that. I think some of the folks who are engaged in this spycraft, think of it as the game, and yet, what is it even that we're playing for? And certainly some of the characters have lost sight of that, and it eats at them. They are hollower because of it, and yet I wouldn't say that any of the performances are hollow. All of them have, like I said, a lived-in feel to it. Yeah.
Well, and you mentioned, excuse me, and you mentioned that this was referred to as the game, so much so that a couple of people were called out on not following the rules correctly. Or someone didn't even really know the rules because they were new.
Yeah, and that was very sad.
Yeah.
But then, we're not experienced spies either. I will just let you guys know we are not spies.
Or maybe we are, but we can't tell them.
I don't know.
We'd have to kill you if we told you.
It's okay. There's like, hi, Mom.
And 3 other friends.
But someday when this really takes off, people will look back on this and think it's cute. But there is this sort of sense of like, even we know, like, don't do that. Like, don't call that guy. Don't go in that direction. Like,
don't go to that bar.
Don't wear headphones on both ears, even if you do have the latest technology, a Walkman that you can strap to your, sexy French underwear.
If you're wearing a wire, why wouldn't you assume everyone's wearing a wire? Little things like this.
Yeah. And yet the look of this movie, the sound of this movie, did such a good job of setting you right into that time and into that place. These folks looked good. Like, even when they were rough and scruffy, I mean, it just looked good. It was the costume design especially,
Mm-hmm.
and how you can evoke which side of the wall you're on just by not just the set design and the properties, but just how people were walking, how people were carrying themselves.
And they addressed that too, that when people would go from one side to the other, when the spies would travel, they would have to change what they were wearing, sometimes change their hair, mannerisms.
Yeah. And the idea of blending in, of fitting in, it's very, very challenging. And I appreciate, the spycraft involved. So
I want to go back to what you were saying about the soundtrack. As someone who's a really big fan of 80s music from a wide variety of genres, it was interesting. Every time I'd hear a clip of something, with the exception of one track, I was able to identify, if not the song, the artist. And it was really interesting just to hear all of this music that, in some cases, I haven't heard in decades. Just to name a few, there was David Bowie, Nina, Depeche Mode was in there. It opens with New Order, Ministry. I mean, it's all over the place. And sometimes versions of songs I've never heard, like the German version of, was it, I don't remember now, it was a David Bowie song or something, had a German version.
Yeah, don't remember now, but just remember thinking in the film how fun it was to hear these songs.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of the fun of this movie is hearing that soundtrack play, and so maybe if this was the first time you hear those songs, they won't trigger the same kind of nostalgia trip that they did for us, but yeah. And
I know you don't like when music is too on the nose, as you term it, but I did appreciate Der Kommissar being in there.
Yeah, that was the only one that kind of made me go, like, really? Because it was played right at the time when, like, the German, or the East German police guy is, it's like, everything else, there was one more, the Voices Carry.
I forgot about that.
Used to, like, to cover someone telling a secret. That was the only other one that made me go, like, like, really? Because those moments, why I object to them is that it makes me think, like, it pulls me out of the action of the film. Like, the coincidence is too great. And especially that, like, that the Voices Carry cue is, like, inside the world.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, really? Like, there's no way that would just happen to be on at that moment.
I didn't even make the connection when we were watching it between that Till Tuesday song and what was going on. I just, in my head, I was just, more 80s music. But yeah, I see that now.
So that's it's not that I, like, don't appreciate the cleverness of it. I see that. I just feel like sometimes our cleverness should be a little more oblique.
Yeah.
So as not to mess up the, gossamer construction that is making a fictional world that I'm sitting on my couch and participating in just through my eyes and my ears.
I think for the most part, they got that right, though.
Yeah. Those were the only two that really, caused me to go, what were they thinking? So now shall we talk about some of the fight sequences, some of the big action
Sure.
brawls?
The choreography was really good for the fights. I'm not sure they were realistic. I'm not sure some of the people would have been able to continue fighting after taking that much injury.
Boy, did they look hurt. It wasn't.
Yes.
This was not a movie where somebody slams somebody else into a wall and they both bounce off as if nothing had happened. This is where every blow counts.
They bounce off as if they've got 3 fractured ribs.
Right. It looks painful. In fact, if you're somebody who's triggered by seeing other people being hurt, this was very what felt like to me realistic looking fighting. Much was made in the leading up to this film about how Charlize Theron was doing all of her own stunts, or a lot of her own stunt work, and a lot of the fight sequences she didn't have a body double, and you can tell you're seeing her, because there's not a lot of bits where I'm gonna throw a punch and then cut away so that we don't see it land. You don't see a lot of the trickery that we are used to seeing in movies like this. But at the other end of it is that she's older than I am, I guess is how I want to put that. And it looks like she's not as strong as some of these guys, and she's not as big as some of these guys, and while she's clearly a competent fighter, and the characters who I'm talking about now, it definitely hurts.
Yeah. Well, and another thing they got right was the makeup. The bruises looked convincing, and even more so, they didn't just magically go away on the next scene like they do in a lot of movies. Once she got a bruise, she had that bruise the rest of the movie. Huge black eye came to mind, but there were some others as well. Even weeks later.
Well, that's what I was thinking. I think we can go back and say, the whole film is set up within this framing device of her being debriefed by her handlers, sort of back at the headquarters. And she starts the film kind of getting ready to go through this ordeal of an interview. And they start by saying, you're hurt. You've been hurt. And I'm paraphrasing. And then the whole of the story is telling her version of how this happened. Is a reliable narrator? Shall we not say?
Yeah, let's not say.
We shall not say.
I don't think this is a spoiler, though. You said telling her version. There's not many other people left to tell a version, so she may be telling the only version that's left.
And yet, there were still some nice, very, very end of the third act plot reversals, which...
There were at least 2.
Yeah, which was a lot of fun. I kind of... In a spy flick, I like there to be a little of that, even right up to the end. This was a very satisfying spy flick for me.
Well, and even when you know the reversals, I think this is still rewatchable. I am positive I've missed things in it on the first watching. I probably would on the second and maybe third as well.
Anybody in particular you want to talk about their performance and things that you enjoyed or didn't enjoy?
Honestly, I think all of the actors did really well with this. I can't think of anyone who portrayed their role poorly or whose role was written poorly.
Yeah, no, this was fun. I think it's always fun to see John Goodman show up.
Yes.
He has sort of an overstatedness? I don't know. There's just a quality about his performance in this and a few other things that we've seen him in lately where Yeah, he's just perfect, you know. You never forget it's John Goodman. He doesn't disappear into the role. I think a little bit like James McAvoy does. Yeah. Or Bill Skarsgård, who we don't see very much of, but he seems to. I always say, oh, who is that fellow? Like, I feel like I know him, and then from role to role to role, I don't go like, oh yes, Bill Skarsgård. Yeah, I know who that is. And maybe that's just lack of familiarity on my part, but we didn't see it that long ago, and I didn't place him from there. So there we are.
I also like that John Goodman, for a recent change, wasn't cast as someone who's either extremely creepy or you just know from the beginning he's a very bad guy. Cloverfield Lane, for instance.
No, I'm going to say I think you're wrong about this character. I think he's a very bad man. Like...
Yes, but he doesn't look like he's just going to go around killing innocent people for no reason whatsoever.
I don't agree with you.
All right.
I definitely had the sense that that's what he was going to do. Yeah, no, I disagree. I mean, he's on the side of the angels, I guess, in theory, but there's a certain point in which, in this film, it says, you know, if you do the things that are associated with this work, it doesn't matter who you're working for.
Yeah.
Like, you're still a bad person, and he seems like a bad person to me.
I'm just saying he's not going to go out of his way to torture bunny rabbits.
I don't know.
Okay.
I just...
So...
We're having a disagreement.
When we get to the comments section, be sure to let us know whether or not you think he would torture bunny rabbits for no reason.
Well, not for no reason, but like... if... Like, he has no problem with that end. Or that means.
Yeah. If
there was an end. Yeah. So there's that.
I still think that's a step up from some of the roles he's had recently.
Maybe. I also enjoyed Toby Jones, who we sometimes see in serious roles, but we sometimes see in comedic roles too. He does a very good turn on The Detectorists, the British series. Mm-hmm. But here, you know, playing that sort of British governmental suit guy. Just the major roles were all very nicely portrayed. I didn't much care for some of the East German guys, but I think I wasn't supposed to, so, you know.
And they captured that.
Well done. But I also I had trouble telling some of them apart.
Yeah. It's the uniforms.
Well, and a lot of them were just goons.
Yeah.
Like, a lot of them were just, you know.
Yeah, a lot of them it wasn't really important that you could keep track of them. They're just random bad guy number 3, or...
It was just bad when you'd see, like when I couldn't keep straight who was in charge.
I'm not sure they could always keep straight who was in charge.
No, I think you were supposed to be able to identify that main KGB guy and keep that straight. So
I think he would torture bunnies for no reason.
Yes.
We're in agreement on that.
We are. That's a bad guy. Bad guy. Alright, well, now that we've clarified who will torture bunnies, any last thoughts? Anything?
I almost started feeling the movie was getting to be a little too long, but then I realized after they did a few things why it kept going. So they did fix that for me, but if they hadn't done something different near the end, I would have complained about the length, I think. Not that the movie itself is too long, but it felt like it was starting to get a little monotonous, maybe, unless they were taking this somewhere.
For me, last thought would be my only quibble with the film is how they treated the French spy character. Yeah. That there was a... Yes, she was new. Yes, she was in over her head. But, I don't know. There was just something about how they ended her character, how... You know, it just... there was something unsatisfying about her introduction, her middle, and her end.
And it's almost like they didn't give her enough training before they sent her out in the field.
Well, that would be like an in-world explanation. My qualm is about how the movie treats her. And how she, like, comes in and leaves, and, you know...
Yeah.
And you see her a few times before she's introduced, but it just... I don't know. If there's one character who gets treated sort of unevenly by the movie, it's this French spy. And that's too bad, because it was an interesting performance.
Yeah, she did a good job with what she was given.
Yes, which was not much. Not much.
So, as I mentioned earlier, please comment below and tell us what we've done well, what we've done poorly, if you agree with our assessment, if you have recommendations for other movies for us, if we've liked this one.
Yeah. Come and find us also on the website. Carson's updated it.
Mm-hmm.
Where can they find that?
At novetovideo.com.
All right. So, now we're going to take a moment to talk about a different movie that you might want to check out in relationship in some way to this film. We call it our override recommendation. Carson, what do you got this week?
Well, like often, I have two.
Ah, cheater.
If you like the spy element of this, I think you would like Aeon Flux. Or, if not the movie, maybe the animated shorts of Aeon Flux. My second recommendation is, if you like the action and kind of twists that this had, Hardcore Henry might be a good choice for you.
Okay, so my recommendation this week, my override, is the movie Spy. Just sort of a straight-up comedy with a little extra spy stuff mixed in, starring Melissa McCarthy. There are some parts of this fight sequencing, and it's not an entirely fresh recommendation. Another critic pointed out this as well, and I just happened to encounter it, but I really, it lands home for me. So check out Spy. Some of the ways in which the choreography happens is similar, I think, in the way that they make use of body and space, and that sort of thing. All right.
Next time on No Veto Video, we're bringing you a comedy from the 70s, Love at First Bite.
It's available on disc. We don't know that it's available online anywhere.
It's not anywhere, at least that I can find.
So either, cast your memory back there, or go check it out on disc. So thank you so much for joining us. We are always happy to have you along with us, and we look forward to seeing you next week. Hit the subscribe button so you get the notification. It helps us out too.
And until next time, goodbye.
Bye.